6 p.m. in Gumgam in the Bamenda 2 subdivision, northwest region of Cameroon. Same time right here in Akwa Douala. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for having us on this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast with me, Immaculate Fogwe. Our major stories tonight: a shocking video circulating widely on social media shows an employee of a Chinese-owned company in Yaoundé being tortured. The disturbing scene has triggered public outrage and reignited debate over workers' rights and labor conditions in Cameroon. This comes just days after the celebration of the International Labour Day. And away from that, Cameroon has slipped to 133rd out of 180 countries in the 2026 World Press Freedom Index, a two-place drop from its 2025 ranking, a signal that the space for free and independent journalism is tightening. In a media landscape marked by precarious working conditions and censorship, a critical question emerges: can the press still fulfill its role as a true thermometer of a society reflecting the realities and equally the concerns of the people? You'll be having answers in the second part of this newscast. Those are top stories tonight. Good evening once more, and thank you so much for having us. Once more, thank you so much for choosing Equinoxe Television. We begin this news edition with this report coming from Yaoundé, where Labour Minister Grégoire Wona strongly condemns the brutal treatment of Cameroonian workers by some owners of Chinese firms in Yaoundé and equally in Douala. Grégoire Wona describes the act as barbaric and promises severe sanctions. Meanwhile, one Chinese suspect has been arrested in connection to that hideous crime. We have more with our reporter, Smart Chikan Gabriel.
In this amateur video that has gone viral on social media, a security officer tortures a civilian based in Yaoundé. Reports say the crime of the Cameroonian was because he attempted to steal from the supermarket. After that of Yaoundé, another civilian was badly tortured at a Chinese commercial hub, Yassa, Douala Littoral region. The two incidents forced the gendarmerie officials to go for a manhunt of those seen in the viral video, and one was arrested at the Chinese supermarket in Yaoundé. The action forced the Minister of Labour and Social Security, Grégoire Wona, to condemn the inhumane treatment that has been given to these workers of Cameroon origin. Grégoire Wona says no employer has the right to treat his employee in a poor way. The minister, in a very firm tone, has promised that the law will take its course as the culprits will be severely punished.
And is torture punishable by law? That's the question many are asking after outrage erupted across Cameroon over the viral video of the Cameroonian being beaten at a Chinese-owned supermarket, as you watched in that report done by Smart Chikan Gabriel. And Barrister Kamwan Limen strongly condemns the act, urging the relevant authorities to bring those responsible to book. More with our staff lady, Anna Bila.
The viral video in which a young Cameroonian is seen being violently flogged by another Cameroonian at a Chinese-owned supermarket in Yaoundé has sent shockwaves down the spines of many compatriots. Dr. Barrister Kamwan Limen is one of them.
How do you explain to any reasonable person that somebody leaves his house in the morning, goes to work, and then Chinese people think that they can call other Cameroonians to beat them? It is a violation of human rights. It is a violation of human dignity, and nobody has a right. It is a criminal offense to beat, to touch somebody without authorization.
The legal mind goes further to insist that torture of any form is punishable in Cameroon. According to the penal code, where accurate pain and suffering is intentionally inflicted to a person acting in the course of duties, the penalty ranges from 2 to 5 years of imprisonment and a fine.
They sanction torture in any form. The labor code in itself sanctions torture, and in the the penal code of Cameroon, torture is one of the offences which is seriously sanctioned.
Such maltreatment of Cameroonians by foreign nationals have been recurrent. This is because of the complicity of some Cameroonians and the society which act as enablers.
I've witnessed a scene where a Cameroonian was locked up because he spoke rudely to a Chinese, and the call came from Yaoundé. Now, when you go, corruption is one of the things that is killing this country a lot. They go on sanction. Nobody sanctions them for acts that have been done. But I'm saying that if this action is not sanctioned, the minister should resign. If we have a minister of labor in this country and this action is not sanctioned, he should resign.
Barrister Limen advises victims never to stay silent, but to denounce any form of physical or psychological torture by any employer, especially foreign nationals.
Please denounce it. I am ready to receive those complaints. I'm sure that if you address a complaint to the president of the Cameroon Bar Council, he's going to react, because he's an institution that always defends the right of the vulnerable.
The said image, which plays down on human dignity, has been widely condemned by lawyers, human rights activists and the civil society in Cameroon. They insist all the perpetrators must be investigated upon and brought to book so justice can take its proper course.
In the same vein, Dr. Barrister Kamwa Limen says such cases are recurrent in Cameroon and that it's time to bring to a stop the maltreatment of poor Cameroonians by foreign nationals. Take a listen to him in this excerpt.
Look, I have a case. It's true that we don't say cases we have, but there is a case where a Chinese company employ, most of these companies, they employ people for dangerous activities without having even insurance policy. They don't have insurance. I have a client with a matter in court where he got his eye burst, and after that he was sent away. I said, okay, give us just your insurance policy, let us follow up these people. There's no insurance. But that is a Cameroonian in Limbe without an eye. Without an eye. Because a Chinese has come to open a quarry. Look, it must stop. It must stop. If there's nobody to talk for these Cameroonians, we have to stand for them and talk for them.
And now we move to Bonepoupa. It is a locality found in Yabasi subdivision of the Camp Division, Lithura region, which is currently experiencing a severe electricity crisis. And despite being connected to the power grid, the area has been without electricity for over 3 months now, affecting nearly 3,000 households. This has led to sleepless nights, stalled businesses and students struggling to study with their candlelights. Details with Innocent Aze.
Despite being fully equipped with functional electrical infrastructure, Bonepoupa in Yabasi subdivision, Camp Division of the Lithura region has been plunged into darkness for over 3 months, leaving an estimated 3,000 households to grapple with daily hardship. In homes across the locality, the blackout has disrupted basic living conditions. We rely on candles sold at exorbitant prices. The heat is unbearable and our food rots in refrigerators. The situation is even more alarming for education. With end-of-year and official examinations fast approaching, students say they are unable to revise under proper conditions. We are forced to return to kerosene lamps and torches, which strain our eyes while we try to study. I come back from school at 4 p.m. exhausted, and in the evening I can't study because of the blackout. Economically, the impact is just as severe. Small businesses that depend on electricity are struggling to survive. Some traders have turned to generators just to keep drinks cold and preserve perishable goods, but at the high cost. We still incur losses because we spent over 30,000 francs CFA weekly on fuel. As frustration mounts among the roughly 3,000 affected households in Bonepoupa, residents are calling on competent authorities and energy providers to urgently restore power, warning that the prolonged blackout is not only crippling livelihoods but also jeopardizing the future of students preparing for crucial examinations.
And now we take this sad story. The Cameroonian legal community is mourning Alexis Dipanda. He is the former Supreme Court president who passed away at the age of 84. He led the court for 24 years, but is best known for pronouncing President Bobia presidential win after saying, "My hands are tied." Lo Manero tells us more about who he really was.
A monumental chapter of Cameroon's judicial history was closed today. Alexis Dipanda, a man who stood at the peak of the legal system of nearly a quarter of a century, passed away this Monday at the age of 84. His journey began in 1942 in the littoral region. At a time when Cameroon was just finding its footing of a sovereign nation, Mwele was at the forefront of his intellectual elite. As a member of the historic first graduating class of the Faculty of Law in Yaoundé, he belonged to a rare group of pioneers trained to translate colonial legal framework into national institutions. After the further refined his expertise in the high-stake judicial chamber of Paris, he returned home not as a lawyer but as a reformer. By 1990s, he reached the zenith of his career, appointed as the first president of the Supreme Court. For nearly a quarter of his century, he was the final arbiter of law. His tenure was marked by a commitment of magistracy of career, the idea that judges should be highly specialized and technically beyond reproach. However, his leadership was also tested by the fire of politics. During the 1992 presidential crisis, the eye of the world were on him. His handling of the electoral disputes during the era remains a subject of intense study for political scientists and legal scholars alike, highlighting the complex intersection of law and the stability of the state. His expertise reached far beyond our borders. From Geneva to Hague, he served as a global voice for the justice of UN Committee against torture and permanent courts of arbitration. He was also a man of letters, authoring several key texts that remains essential reading for legal professionals across the continent. Alexis Dipanda was more than a judge. He was a bridge between founding era of our republic and the modern days.
Lo Manero reporting there. Now we take you out of Cameroon. Nigeria is arranging repatriation flights for its citizens in South Africa amid escalating anti-foreigner tensions and equally protests. The move follows attacks on foreign nationals, with some Nigerians reporting harassment and equally violence. Meanwhile, in Senegal, tensions are rising between President Bassirou Diomaye Faye and his Prime Minister. And finally, Iran claims to have turned back a U.S. warship from the Strait of Hormuz, while the U.S. denies any missile strike. We have details with our reporter, Mala Glory.
Nigeria is planning to repatriate its national in South Africa willing to return home voluntarily amid growing fears that recent attacks on foreigners could escalate. The foreign minister highlighted President Bola Tinubu's concern about the attacks in Southern African nation and condemns the violence against foreign nationals. Nigeria has summoned South Africa's acting high commissioner over the issue and will be holding a meeting this Monday to brainstorm on possible solutions. And in Senegal, tensions grow between the president and his prime minister. Last Saturday, the president declared that their party was bigger than any one man. Bassirou Diomaye Faye's statement was clearly directed to his prime minister and one-time mentor Ousmane Sonko. In a television interview, Diomaye Faye warned that the Pastef party risks being destroyed if participants do not change. And elsewhere, the United States military on Monday denied claims that Iran struck a U.S. Navy vessel as American forces now offer to guide commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz, where hundreds have been stuck since the Iran war began. Tehran has blocked vessels that don't receive its authorization. Iranian news agencies, including the semi-official agency Fars and the Iranian Labor News Agency, claim that Iran has struck a U.S. vessel near Iranian port southeast of the strait, accusing it of violating maritime security and navigation norms. The U.S. military has said the new initiative might involve guided missile destroyers, more than 100 aircraft and 15,000 service members, but has not specified what kind of assistance or escort it will provide.
The report done by Malak Lori ends this first part of the news. Talking Point comes up next. Yesterday, Cameroon joined the world to commemorate World Press Freedom Day. But how free is the Cameroonian press? And especially in the context where a crisis has been affecting the two Anglophone regions, the Northwest and Southwest regions. How are journalists in this part of the world coping with all the challenges? That's what we are going to be seeing in tonight's edition of the 6 p.m. Primetime Newscast. And to answer my questions on these questions, we'll be having a journalist. He's known by the name BAKAH Derick. Good evening, BAKAH Derick. It's a pleasure to have you on the program today.
Thank you very much, Immaculate. It's such a privilege to have you on this day when we generally have very low resumption of economic activity. It's coming to an end, and we're happy to have you today.
BAKAH Derick, you are working as a journalist in Bamenda, a city deeply affected by the ongoing conflict in the Northwest region. What is it like reporting from such a high-risk environment?
Well, doing so for slightly above 9 years now is becoming part of our daily life, and it's beginning to seem sometimes like it's normal. So it's not very complicated for those of us who've been here on the ground, because it's just a matter of knowing how to go about the business. I mean, for those of us who are here, we owe our population only one thing, that's one obligation that we have, which is to serve them with verified information.
Today is Monday, and your region is currently observing what is called as Ghost Town. How are you able to get to work today?
Well, I can say for sure at a certain level that being a media professional sometimes is an advantage in a conflict zone, because at some point you are known. They know you very well. They know your family. They know where you live. And so if anybody has problem with that, you know, the fact that we're able to access the workplace on days like this, I'm sure they would have likely been notified or intercepted at some point. But globally, I think it's something that we do sometimes very early in the early hours, and then you manage as you can manage, but most of the time you avoid transportation. So you do that on foot, like any other person, like healthcare workers who are going to the hospital. Sometimes they have ambulances that carry them, but then we're fortunate that maybe in the early hours of the morning, we could have some commercial bike transportation, and then we can use that to be able to access. Because as the people stay at home today, it's one of the days that news is highly consumed. So there's no way you will say that you want to be absent from work because of what we are facing. So we brave it, and that's one of the challenges that we actually face on days like this.
As a field reporter, what are some of the biggest challenges you face on a daily basis while covering events in that part of the country?
Well, I think, Immaculate, for many years we've been talking about access to information, and each time you say this, those in leadership may want to think that you are blamed for not making information accessible. But I think reporting in conflict has given another perspective to the issue of access to information, because you see that even news sources are relatively dried up completely, and then people speak to you, you have a lot of anonymous content. You have things happening in the conflict zone, but unfortunately, people give you this information and nobody wants to opt to be identified with it. So you have to be treating content as if you are treating from tertiary sources when actually you are talking to the news actors themselves. You know, it's a major challenge for us. And that's why you see a lot of stories have gone uncovered in the region or underreported. And we keep saying that the conflict is underreported because of the absence of these sources that can give you information and stand to receive the attribution. It's very complicated for us. And I think it's a major challenge. Well, other challenges have been there. Movement difficulties, especially on days with low resumption of economic activities like this one. And then, you know, prolonged lot of environment and all of that, they all contribute to some of these instances. But then I think that if all of these things were happening, yet people could own up to the content they share with us, would have had a lot of ease covering news from around the region. And I want to just highlight this particularly. And secondly, media literacy has become a major problem. Media literacy, I mean, from the side of our information consumers. We are now battling between social media and verified news content that news organizations serve the public. But unfortunately, these people have raw information which is not treated, which has a lot of, issues that can be raised when it comes to technical management of information. Unfortunately, they consume the one that they receive untreated, and it is the way it is. Why? Because of lack of media literacy. So personally, I think that these are some fundamental issues that are beginning to emerge very strongly as the crisis go on, as we live in a conflict, and as the progress, as we continue to witness things change on a daily basis. If I tell you the challenge we've had treating the recent case that happened in Jakiri subdivision, to be more precise in Kwanto, it's been difficult for us managing that information because nobody is owning up to it. Nobody wants to speak to you directly to your face. And so you end up treating issues of a hearsay, and this is not very good for the work that we do.
BAKAH Derick, most journalists in that part of the country seems to be at a very tight corner. When they work with the military, they are considered as black legs. And when they work with the separatists, they are considered as people, they consider everyone as separatists. Now, there is a saying that there is no brave journalist in the grave. In such a volatile context, how do you balance courage with personal safety?
And that's the reason that we have now to be very cautious when we're treating or managing information. As I said before, when we have to manage information that we cannot 100% or at least even 90% authenticate the news source, we are very careful about it. And so trading in this environment is very difficult. As I said, one of the things we owe our people is giving them verified information. And so once we cannot ascertain the veracity of this information, we kill it, as easy as that. So you'll be waiting that you have sources from modern or traditional media, but then you end up not having because the information flow is not clear enough for us to be able to manage. So I can for sure that our journalists are being very careful in the way they handle content like this, and that's why we can say for sure that many stories have not been reported in this crisis because of lack of credible sources around the news stories. So just living is good there's no brave journalist in the grave. That is very true. And so we're being very keen. It's not just about moving around and going to the place or just saying things, because you say things that are not correct, definitely the actors in this conflict will come for you. So you must say things that somebody is owning up to the facts or owning up to the information they are giving to you in a way that you can live, and continue to tell other stories.
In a recent report done by Reporters Without Borders, Cameroon ranks 133rd out of 180 countries in the 2026 World Press Freedom Index, that is dropping from 131st in 2025. What's your reaction to this ranking, and do you think this ranking accurately reflects the realities of journalists face in Cameroon, particularly in conflict-affected regions like the Northwest region where you find yourself at the moment?
All right. I mean, it's a very interesting conversation to have, and I think this time does not afford us the luxury to speak to it completely. But I want to say that if you look at the parameters that Reporters Without Borders use to be able to do their ranking on the World Press Index, you can say for sure that many countries know that their position that they get, they deserve it. Looking at the nature of the qualitative and quantitative analysis that is made public each time they are publishing this detail on the ranking. Let me just use our context, for example. When we look at the political environment, when we look at the economic environment, when we look at the legal framework or the safety nature of media professionals in the country, I can say without fear that Cameroon deserves its positioning. For the first thing I'm talking about the issue of access to information. Access to information is a very important thing for journalists. Well, we have our concerns here on the field as few reporters here with the non-state groups, but for the state, does the state assure media professionals in Cameroon that they can have access to information? This is a political issue which needs to be given a legal framework by the National Assembly. So how often does the National Assembly discuss the subject of the Information Act in this country which does not exist? I think if you look at that, primarily you can say that there is the political context in our country does not afford the media professionals the freedom to practice. Secondly, let us look at the issue of subsidies to media. I don't know whether we'll call it media aid or media subsidies or media grants or whatever, but I think that that is also another arm. The economic aspect of it. Who decides how much goes to the media? You see that in our context, it's decided by the government. Should it be so? In other countries, it is a parliamentary decision that is made known at the start of the financial year. The decision is taken at the National Assembly and voted as law that at the close of this year, we should have given the media this amount of money. In that way, you can see that there is some level of freedom. And so I think our country is aware that we have not put in place sufficient parameters to be able to say that we are not guilty of such a ranking by Reporters Without Borders.
Now tell us, BAKAH Derick, how do you cope mentally and emotionally with what you witness on the ground? We hear gunshots every now and then. We hear people are being kidnapped. We hear people are being killed. How are you coping with all these maneuvers happening in that part of the country?
I can say for sure that this is a very interesting area, and I think that psychologists in our environment should really consider having conversations with journalists in conflict zones around this subject. For us, it is becoming a normal, it's becoming a way of life. But then when you come to the knowledge, each time you come to a reflection that you are like any other citizen that could be abducted or can be arrested or anything can happen to you with this context, that trauma comes to you automatically. And when you remember instances that have happened to our colleagues before, you know you are being a little bit too careful. And this contributes to the output of the work that we do. So I think that we just try as much as possible to associate with lots of socialization. We try to meet as colleagues as often as possible. We have time with family. You socialize as much as possible so that you can actually reduce the level of mental stress you will be suffering as a result of the work that you do. Imagine you moving across, like sometimes I try to go to Kumbo, I try to go to a couple of places. My experience each time on these roads are never too good. You know, things that happen to other people or things that happen to me. And sometimes when I come back, you know, you need to find time to take a rest, you know, to be sure that you're stabilizing enough to be able to face work completely. So I think that the conflict has not gone anywhere yet. We are still in difficulty, and mentally and psychologically, I can tell you that media professionals here are just managing to survive.
And what message do you have for other journalists working in the same condition as you, and also to the government?
Yeah, I think we laid the foundation already to say that the basis of our work is that we share verified information. Verified information is the key. Before we share content, let us be sure that somebody has accepted to take responsibility for it. And then we proceed from there. We have lots of other people who are out of the country telling the story the way they want to tell the story. In that way, to me, if they have their protection, that's good. But for us who are on the ground, ensure that you have content that somebody is ready to opt for, to accept that, well, whether in camera or anywhere else, the person can accept that they gave you that information. This is very fundamental to me. Secondly, I really want to think that for our government to succeed sometimes, even in lobbying for resources out of this country, building our international profile, building on the image of this country, I think it is at their own best interest to ensure that the press is free in their functioning, that they have proper access to government information. Just imagine where we are discussing the national census right now. National census is being discussed. If I tell you, we are hearing that there will be workshops around the place for media professionals. But I can tell you already, I don't know whether that is the Northwest has taken place or is still to take place, but I can already tell you that when that will happen, I'm not being prophetic, you will realize that the media professionals that will be part of that arrangement are those who are not functioning in a way that they are supposed to function, but those who are aligning with the status quo, with the leadership. Tell me how you are sure that information on the census will get to the right people. The system must be open to everybody, irrespective of their position. It is very important to have information given to the people and to everybody without any form of bias. I want to thank you very much, Immaculate. I think that these are my thoughts. Let government ensure that information is accessible to everyone within the media space.
BAKAH Derick, thank you for accepting my invitation on Talking Point tonight.
It was such a privilege being with you. And I can only wish our brothers and sisters a happy World Press Freedom Day. The observance was yesterday. Today, I think some people are still carrying on activities. We must contribute to shaping a future that is peaceful. We must work hard to ensure that we work for a future that is at peace. And I think it's our responsibility as media professionals to contribute to that governance agenda.
And that's how we saw it on tonight's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your keen attention. Stay in the company of interesting programs as the program Equinoxe comes up next. From us to you over there, bye-bye for now.